A blood-curdling scream broke through the silent streets of Parker Avenue, reverberating in the luxurious home of the poor widow Fichi, whose husband died a while ago. The scream was raw and piercing, a cry of sheer terror that no one in the calm neighborhood could ignore. It was past midnight, and the calm neighborhood was awoken by a terrifying scream, which made everyone wonder what could have happened. At the front gate, security officers Bala and Yusuf froze. Bala, the older of the two, leaped up from his post, his heart racing. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Yusuf grabbed his flashlight, his hands trembling. "Something is wrong with Madame," he said as they rushed towards the house, calling out. "Madame, are you okay?" Bala shouted, his voice echoing through the cold night air. But there was no response, only another chilling scream from inside the house, where Madame Ifechi stood frozen in her bathroom, her back pressed against the sink, with her eyes closed as she let out another terrifying scream. Her bathroom, which was usually pristine with white marble tiles and gleaming fixtures, was now a terrifying nightmare. Cockroaches, hundreds, maybe thousands, crawled everywhere. They covered the floor, climbed the walls, and swarmed the mirror. They scuttled over the sink, their antennae twitching. Some were huge flying cockroaches, as large as her palm. The air was filled with the sickening sound of their legs clicking against the tiles. "Chica, help!" she screamed, her voice cracking, as Chica jerked up from her sleep terrified. The screams made her stomach churn as she grabbed the broom and dashed towards her madame's bedroom, her feet moving faster than her mind. The gatemen were now at the front door knocking as they yelled out to Madame Fechi, asking what the problem was. Fechi could hear their voices but couldn't bring herself to respond. The terror she felt in that moment was unexplainable as she froze there in shock, unable to move. The cockroaches were now moving in waves, their sheer numbers making it seem as though the bathroom had come alive. Chika barged into the bathroom, holding a broom in her hand, her eyes widened in shock as she took in the horrifying sight. "Ah, Jesu Christi!" she exclaimed. "Madame, where did they come from?" she asked as Fechi yelled at her to kill every one of them. "Kill them all!" Fechi cried, her voice trembling with fear. "Kill them, Chika, before they fill the entire house," she said as Chika swung into action and began to smash the cockroaches. The sound of their bodies crunching under the broom filled the room, but no matter how many she killed, more seemed to pour out from the drain. "Madame, this is not normal," Chika said, panting as she stepped back. "These cockroaches are evil," she said as the cockroaches suddenly began to fly as though they heard what she said. Fechi and Chika quickly rushed out of the bathroom, shutting the door behind them to ensure that no cockroach leaves the bathroom. By this time, the gatemen had forced their way into the house, rushing towards the commotion. "Madame, what's going on?" Bala shouted as Chika narrated everything to him. Bala, accompanied by Yusuf, walked into the bathroom trying to kill the cockroaches, but the more they killed them, the more the cockroaches multiplied. Terrified at the sight, Bala and Yusuf stumbled out of the bathroom unable to kill the strange cockroaches. Fechi shook in fear as tears poured down her eyes. "What did I do to deserve this?" she said. "Why is this happening to me?" she said as her phone buzzed in her hand. It was her mother, who just had a terrifying dream about her. "Mama," Fechi said as she held up her phone to her ear. "Fechi, what is happening?" her mother asked as Fechi narrated the entire incident to her. "Mama, I don't know what's happening," she cried, her voice breaking. "The house is cursed. There are cockroaches everywhere, and no matter how many we kill, they keep coming back. Mama, I'm scared." Her mother's voice grew firm, despite her fear. "Fechi, listen to me. This is not ordinary. You have to move out of that room first. You are not safe there, she said to Fechi, who quickly left her bedroom, ensuring that the door to the bathroom was locked. They all retired to the living room, terrified of what they had seen. Fechi, tired and exhausted, drifted off into a very deep sleep and woke up in the early hours of the morning to a faint whisper and flickering light coming from the back of her house. Curious and uneasy, she tiptoed to the window and caught sight of Chika, her maid, hunched over, holding a candle in her hands. The flickering light cast strange shadows on her face as she muttered some words that Fechi could not make out. Fechi's heart raced as she watched, her mind filled with a million questions. Was Chika behind all that was happening? Fechi could feel goosebumps pierce through her body as the thought ran through her mind. Before she could decide whether to confront her, Chika looked up sharply as though sensing that she was being watched. Fechi quickly retreated from the window, pretending to be asleep when Chika re-entered the house moments later. The next morning, Fechi confronted Chika, asking what she was doing outside so late. Chika brushed it off with a nervous laugh, claiming that she was praying for protection after the recent events. But Fechi could not shake the feeling that there was more to what Chika was saying than what she was letting on. They decided to go check on the cockroaches in the bathroom and realized that there was no single cockroach in sight. The bathroom was surprisingly clean, as if nothing had happened the night before. Fechi and Chika stood in the doorway, their expression a mixture of confusion and fear. The marble tiles gleamed under the morning sunlight streaming through the bathroom window. There wasn't a single cockroach to be seen, no bodies, no remnants, nothing. This, this does not make sense, Chika whispered, clutching her broom tightly. Madam, it's like they were never here. Fechi shook her head, her hands trembling. They were here, Chika. We both saw them. Everyone saw them, including Yusuf and Bala. Although Fechi tried to believe that Chika had no hand in all that was happening, she could not shake off the feeling that Chika's late night activities and the strange vanishing act of the cockroaches were connected. Just as they stood there stunned, the house bell went off and Chika rushed to check who it was. It was their next door neighbor Omar, who had come to check if Fechi was alright. Fechi, are you alright? I heard your screams last night. Everyone did. What happened? She asked Fechi, who forced a smile and gestured for her to sit. It was nothing serious, she said, revealing that it was only a minor insect problem. Insects? Omar asked, looking so shocked. Fechi, that didn't sound like an insect problem. It sounded more like someone who was being attacked. Attacked? Oh no, no one was being attacked, Fechi said quickly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm just terribly afraid of insects, and it caught me off guard. She gestured vaguely, trying to appear nonchalant about the issue. Fechi did everything possible to appear unbothered, but Omar did not seem convinced by her story. She leaned in, her voice low, as she informed Fechi of the terrifying story she had heard about the house. I've heard stories about this house, the strange things that have happened here before. The last couple who lived here packed out 2 months after moving in. Their daughter almost killed them in their sleep with a knife, and when they carried out their investigation, it was revealed that the strange things that happened were tied to the house. Fechi, are you sure you are safe? She asked again, looking Fechi in the eyes, but Fechi did all she could to mask the terror that she felt in that moment. Her stomach twisted to hear all that Omar was saying about the house and its previous occupants. Fechi moved into the house with her husband shortly before his death after convincing him to get the house. She could remember vividly how much her late husband despised the house and how many times he urged them to sell the house and get another shortly after they got it. But Fechi, seeing that the house was the only vacant one in the neighborhood, kicked against his suggestion, insisting that he had to be the house or nothing else. She had always dreamed of living in this neighborhood, surrounded by the creme de la creme of the society, and was not willing to give it up for anything. Not long afterwards, her husband went to sleep and never woke up. Fechi began to see signs that she had never paid attention to all this while. Her husband's strange death and the strange cockroach appearance pointed to nothing else than a curse tied to the house. The realization hit her like a cold wave, and for the first time, Fechi regretted ever insisting on moving in. She began to wonder if her stubbornness had cost her husband his life and was now threatening her own. Oma's words echoed in her mind, unsettling her further. The strange things were tied to this house. She felt a chill creep up her spine and her hands began to tremble. Fechi, Oma said softly, snapping her out of her thoughts. I don't mean to scare you, but you need to act fast. This house is dangerous. Whatever is here, it's not natural. Chika, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. Madam, I've been telling you since yesterday, this is not normal. We need to get a pastor who can deal with these things. Oma chipped in, informing Fechi of a very strong pastor that she knew. His name was Pastor Ade, and he was so powerful, she said, as she put a call across to him, inviting him to the house immediately. Not long afterwards, Pastor Ade arrived at the house. When he arrived, he carried a large Bible, a bottle of anointing oil, and a serious expression that deepened as Fechi recounted the events that occurred. This is no ordinary house, Pastor Ade said after listening. There is a spirit tied to this place, and it feeds off pain, loss, and fear. Your husband's death may not have been natural, and now it's coming for you. You have to move out of this house immediately if you plan to leave. Pastor Ade's words hung in the air, heavy and final. Fechi's heart sank. The thought of leaving the house that she had fought so hard to live in was unbearable, but the terror she had experienced was worse. She clutched her trembling hands together and asked, Pastor, is there no way to cleanse the house, to make it safe? Pastor Ade shook his head solemnly. This house is marked, Madam Fechi. It's not just the house, it's the land beneath it. Whatever spirit that's tied here is ancient and deep-rooted. Driving it out is not impossible, but it's so dangerous. The spirits may retaliate against anyone who tries to fight it. Oma placed a comforting hand on Fechi's shoulder. Listen to the pastor. Your life is more important than this house. Chika chipped in, her voice filled with fear. Madam, please, let's leave. I don't want anything to happen to you or to any of us. Fechi hesitated as tears poured down her eyes. This house was supposed to be my dream house, she said. I moved here to start a new life. I thought it would make me happy, she muttered as tears poured down her eyes. Pastor Ade leaned forward, his tone soft as he spoke. Sometimes, what looks beautiful on the outside is rotten underneath. You've already lost your husband, Madam Fechi. Don't let this house take you too. Fechi nodded slowly, her tears streaming. You're right, Pastor. I can't let this house destroy me. Just as Fechi began to think of what to do, her phone buzzed, and she realized that it was her mother. I'm on my way to the city, Fechi, her mother said with urgency in her voice. I'll be with you soon. Stay strong. The thought of her mother arriving gave Fechi a glimmer of hope. She turned to Chika and requested that she made her something to eat as they wait on her mother. It was already evening, and Fechi could not wait for the break of dawn to see her mother. Chika rushed into the kitchen to prepare the meal as Fechi remained in the living room, deep in her own thoughts. She decided to head to the kitchen to grab a glass of water when she almost slipped on some spilled oil on the kitchen floor, narrowly hitting her head on the counter. Fechi could feel her heart race as Chika rushed off to her to apologize. Fechi could not fight off the feeling that Chika had something up her sleeves. She watched Chika's nervous face as she apologized profusely, claiming that it was an accident. I didn't mean for this to happen. Madam, I swear, I was just rushing to finish up the cooking, Chika said as she continued to apologize, but Fechi's gaze lingered for a moment before she finally spoke. Be careful next time, she said, her voice firm but wary. As Chika returned to the stove to cook, several gigantic cockroaches began to creep out from under the kitchen cabinet, terrorizing Fechi, who stood frozen in horror as the cockroaches emerged in waves. The sight of their twitching antennae and glossy bodies sent shivers down her spine. Chica! Fechi screamed, pointing towards the floor. Chica turned, her face a mask of confusion and terror as she saw the cockroaches crawling towards her. She grabbed the nearest object, a rolling pin, and began swatting at them frantically. But the more Chica attacked, the more they seemed to multiply, just as they had done in the bathroom, their movement unnaturally coordinated as though controlled by a single will. Madame, leave the kitchen, Chica shouted, her voice shaking. Fechi stumbled back, her legs barely supporting her as she fled the kitchen. The sound of Chica smashing the cockroaches followed her, mixed with the sickening crunch of their bodies. Fechi ran out of the house in terror, with Chica following suit a few seconds later. They stood outside the house, watching as the massive cockroaches took over. The windows were all covered in cockroaches, and Fechi stood there trembling, clutching her chest in her hands as the reality of the situation hit her like a crashing wave. The house seemed alive, rejecting them and spewing cockroaches from every crack and crevice. The sound of their legs clicking against the glass filled the air, drowning out the silence of the night. Chica, holding her rolling pin tightly, turned to Fechi and said, "Madame, this house is cursed. We cannot stay here. We need to leave now." The security guards, Bala and Yusuf, rushed outside, their faces pale as they asked Fechi a question that she had no answer to. "Madame, what do we do?" Bala asked, his voice shaking and his eyes fixated on the swarming cockroaches. Fechi looked helplessly at them, her mind racing. The house, which was supposed to be her dream home, was now a living nightmare. The words of Pastor Ade echoed repeatedly in her mind. This house is marked. It feeds on pain, loss, and fear. Fechi, in that moment, did not know what to do, but what she was sure of was that her mother would definitely figure something out. "Let's wait on my mother," she said, informing Chica that they had to stay outside tonight. "We can't go back in there until my mother comes," she said to Chica, who nodded her head in agreement. That night was one of the longest and most horrifying nights for Fechi. By midnight, the entire house seemed to come alive. Cockroaches poured out of every crevice, covering the walls, floors, and even the windows. It was as if the house itself was rejecting them. Fechi, Chica, and the security guards remained outside in the cold, terrified and helpless. The sight of the cockroaches swarming the windows and spilling out from under the door made them shiver. "Madame, this house is evil," Bala said, his voice shaking in fear as he tried to convince Fechi to leave the house. "We'll wait for my mother," Fechi said, clutching a blanket around her, feeling a sense of calm, knowing that her mother would surely know what to do. By morning, Fechi's mother arrived. The sight of her daughter and the others huddled outside, their faces pale and drawn with fear, broke her heart. "What is going on here?" her mother demanded as she stepped out of the taxi. "Mama, the house, it's cursed," Fechi said, her voice trembling. "There were cockroaches everywhere last night. We couldn't stay inside." Her mother's expression hardened. Without another word, she walked into the house. The others hesitated, but they followed her cautiously. Inside the house was eerily quiet. The cockroaches were gone, as if they had never been there. The floors gleamed, and everything was in its place. Her mother walked around the house, her sharp eyes scanning every corner. She muttered prayers under her breath, sprinkling water she had brought with her. Then, in the living room, she stopped, her gaze fixed on a painting hanging on the wall. It was beautiful, a serene landscape of a village at sunset, but something about it seemed wrong. "Where did you get this painting?" her mother asked, her voice sharp. "We found it here when we moved in," Fechi replied, confused. "Why, mother?" Her mother didn't answer. Instead, she yanked the painting off the wall and marched outside with it. "Mama, what are you doing?" Fechi cried, following her. Her mother placed the painting on the ground and poured kerosene over it and then struck a match. As the flames consumed the painting, an unnatural screech echoed through the air, causing everyone to flinch. At that moment, their neighbor Oma burst out of her house screaming, "My body is on fire!" She shrieked, clawing at her arms as if trying to extinguish invisible flames. "I'll confess," Oma cried, collapsing on her knees. "I'll confess," she said again. Everyone stared in shock as Oma began to speak, her voice trembling with guilt. "I put the painting there," she cried, looking at Fechi with wild eyes. "I was the one who sold you the house and all the other tenants before you. I cursed the painting to drive everyone away." "What?" Fechi gasped, stepping back in disbelief. Oma continued, her words stumbling out. "I used the painting to scare away every family that moved in, forcing them to sell the house at a loss. Then I'd have someone buy it for me and I'd sell it again at a higher price. It was all a scheme, and Pastor Ade is not a real pastor as he claims. He works for me by giving fake revelations to the occupants of the house, further scaring them away." Her voice cracked with desperation as she continued to confess. "I didn't mean for anyone to die. I didn't mean for your husband to die," she said as she sobbed uncontrollably. Peach's mother stepped forward, her face stern as she spoke. "Your greed and wickedness brought this upon you. The evil you summoned is turning against you." In the days that followed, Oma was taken away by the police for questioning, and her confession became the talk of the entire neighborhood. Fechi remained in the house, glad that the terror had finally come to an end. She was so grateful to her mother for her strength and wisdom. The house, which had once been a source of pride and joy to her, now felt heavy with memories of terror and loss. Though the curse seemed to have been lifted, Fechi knew she could not live there in peace. The walls still whispered of her husband's death, the cockroaches, and the deception that she suffered. Fechi decided to sell the house, knowing all the pain that he had brought to her life. Fechi then moved into a cozy apartment in town, far from the neighborhood that had once been her dream come true. She focused on rebuilding her life, surrounding herself with people who genuinely cared for her. Chika remained with her and became more like family than a maid. Together, they shared laughter and moments of healing, far removed from the horrors of Parker Avenue. Oma, on the other hand, faced the full weight of the law. Her scheme unraveled, exposing the countless families she had defrauded. Her accomplice, the fake Pastor Ade, was also apprehended and charged for his offense. Their downfall stood as a reminder of what greed and wickedness could do. The lesson to be learned from this story is that greed and dishonesty, driven by selfish ambitions, will always lead to destruction and regret, as seen in Oma's tragic downfall. It teaches us to value integrity and truthfulness, emphasizing that no amount of material gain is worth causing pain to others. Additionally, the story reminds us that stubbornness and ignoring warnings can lead to devastating consequences, as Fechi's insistence on living in the house cost her husband's life and also her peace of mind. Lastly, the story highlights the importance of faith, courage, and the strength of familial bonds, as Fechi's mother's wisdom and determination helped uncover the truth and break the curse, allowing Fechi to rebuild her life with gratitude and a renewed perspective on what truly matters. Nothing can remain hidden forever, so stay clear from evil, as evil always has an expiry date. I hope you enjoyed the story.